Having been in the spotlight for over 30 years now, Sonic the Hedgehog has appeared in a long list of games, as well as in countless other forms of media. In typical Sonic style, he doesn't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. We're gonna have to speed up too if we're ever gonna finish this thing. This is the evolution of Sonic the Hedgehog, Part 2. Following the successful release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis, the titular Hedgehog began appearing in his own comic books. First, there was a Japanese manga series in the magazine Shogaku Yanensei, loosely based on the video games. It had its own unique storyline and is most notable for introducing the characters of Amy and Charmy Bee, who would both later appear in Sonic video games and TV series. Speaking of which, in 1992, the first episode of the animated series Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog was released. Another TV series simply named Sonic the Hedgehog came on TV 1 year later. It featured a more dramatic and darker story than the Adventures series. The program aired for 2 seasons with a total of 26 episodes. Unfortunately for fans of the series, the 3rd season was canceled, ending the series with a cliffhanger. Fleetway Editions in the UK began publishing Sonic the Comic in May 1993, while at the same time in the US, Archie Comics began production of the official Sonic the Hedgehog comic. The latter was recognized in the Guinness World Records for being the longest-running comic series based on a video game. The final issue, number 290, was released in December 2016. For a brief time in 1993, Sega even sponsored a Japanese football team. Sega also sponsored a Formula One team and a racing weekend. Fittingly, the Sega European Grand Prix at Donington Park in the UK was an exciting race, featuring a lap by Ayrton Senna, regarded by many as the greatest lap ever in an F1 car. The event culminated in Senna holding aloft a Sonic the Hedgehog trophy at the end of the race. Sonic received his own arcade game in June 1993. Developed by Sega AM3, Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog was mainly seen in Japanese arcades, although a few units made their way to the United States and Europe. The game featured 2 new playable characters alongside Sonic, namely Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo. All 3 had been kidnapped by Dr. Eggman and taken to Eggman Island. The game was an isometric platformer and allowed players to control each of the characters using a trackball for movement and a single action button for a spin jump move. The aim was to get through 6 levels as quickly as possible while avoiding traps such as spears, icicles, and flame pits. The 7th level was Eggman's Tower, from which the player would need to escape and get off the island before it self-destructed, an event caused by Dr. Eggman, of course. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave the game a 10 out of 10, praising its cinematics and hilarious character animations. The magazine declared that it shatters your perception of what a good game should be. Fun fact, on November 25, 1993, Sonic appeared in Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade as the first ever video game character in balloon form. In fact, he would remain the only video game-inspired balloon until PPAChao in 2001. However, things didn't exactly go smoothly for Sonic. Heavy winds pushed the giant 6-story tall balloon into a lamppost, which pierced his eye at one point and caused him to deflate. Worse than that, though, the light fixture shattered and injured a man and little girl. Luckily, they weren't too badly hurt, but it was definitely not Sonic's finest hour. On September 23, 1993, Sonic made the leap from cartridge to CD, as it was released for the newly introduced Sega CD. The 2D platformer titled Sonic CD ushered in a new era and a couple of new characters. Amy Rose, a girl hedgehog with the hots for Sonic, made her debut, as did Metal Sonic, a robot version of Sonic built by Dr. Robotnik. Beginning on Sonic's home planet, the majority of the game actually takes place on the mystical Little Planet. a place of beauty and wonder that appears for 1 month a year and houses the magical time stones. These 7 gems can alter time, transforming landscapes and fixing or creating damage in an instant. Obviously, Dr. Robotnik intends to use the stones for his world domination plans, and it's up to Sonic to intervene. The pesky Amy Rose appears on Little Planet after foreseeing a meeting with Sonic and her tarot cards, but is kidnapped by Metal Sonic. Now Sonic, or the player, must rescue Amy Rose and stop the time stones from falling into evil hands. This time, Sonic is the only playable character, but he has another new move, the Super Peel Out. In-game, Sonic uses time warp signs to travel to the past or future and get the best possible ending. The player needs to secure good futures in each zone. Music was at the center of controversy for this title, with the North American release featuring a different soundtrack to the original and receiving some heavy criticism for it. Aside from the musical hiccup, critics worldwide tended to agree that Sonic CD was one of the best games for Sega's new console. The time travel game mechanic was seen as innovative, and the graphics were admired. Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded it Best Sega CD Game of 1993. 1.5 million Sonic CD copies were sold. Fun fact, hidden images and messages can be found by entering different codes into the game's sound test. If you set FM to 46, PCM to 12, and DA to 25, you were confronted by a creepy picture and Japanese writing, which roughly translates to "fun is infinite." A mistranslation of the word Majin, meaning evil spirit, made things eerier, as did the music that was played, hence the message and image being used as a form of creepypasta since. Sonic Chaos was released in 1993 for the Sega Master System and Sega Game Gear. Developed by Aspect and published by Sega, it would be the final platform-based Sonic title for the Master System in Europe. It was very similar to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in terms of gameplay, but featured new movesets and power-ups, such as rocket shoes and time stops. It was also the first 8-bit Sonic title where a gamer could play as Tails. Sonic Chaos pioneered the speedometer, which showed players how fast they were traveling through zones in kilometers per hour. While the game was praised for its graphics and the ability to play as Tails, some felt the game lacked challenge, and the level designs were bland. Sonic was a very busy hedgehog in 1993, as he also featured in Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball. Developed initially for the Sega Genesis, the adventure pinball game has been re-released on 11 different platforms.
Sonic Spinball!
Consisting of 4 levels, the main aim is to create a number of Chaos Emeralds in order to advance. Once a player has collected the required amount, they enter a boss room for a boss battle. While it had the look, feel, and sound familiar to Sonic fans, critics weren't impressed by the clunky controls and physics compared to other pinball titles. Fun fact, in 2010, Alton Park opened a Sonic Spinball roller coaster with spinning cards. In 2016, the ride was rebranded to Spinball Whizzer, though there are still Sonic references. The first Sonic-based spin-off game not to feature or even mention our famous blue protagonist was Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and debuted towards the end of 1993. A falling block puzzle game reminiscent of Tetris, it was based on the Japanese Mega Drive port of the arcade game Puyo Puyo. The visuals were altered and the music rearranged to star Sonic's arch-nemesis, Dr. Ivo Robotnik. Interestingly, this title is set amidst events in the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog TV series. References to the show include the opponents seen in the scenario mode, who all appeared in the show's first episode, plus Dr. Robotnik's Fortress, which can be seen in the background and in the game's ending. IGN gave the game a score of 7.5. Gaming Magazine loved it even more, giving it a 90% and declaring it the 9th best game of all time. They described it as a devilish, addictive game, which even haters of all things Sonic-related will love. A range of Sonic books and novels were published in December 1993. Puffin Books released Sonic Adventures game books titled Metal City Mayhem and Zone Rangers. Virgin Books produced novels called Sonic the Hedgehog in Robotnik's Laboratory, Sonic the Hedgehog in the Fourth Dimension, and Sonic the Hedgehog and the Silicon Warriors. Meanwhile, Troll Associates brought out a novel simply called Sonic the Hedgehog. It was February 1994 when the third installment of the main Sonic games came to Sega Mega Drive, or Sega Genesis. Picking up where the story of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 ended, Dr. Robotnik and his damaged Death Egg crash land on the floating Angel Island. Here we are introduced to Knuckles the Echidna for the very first time, whose job is to guard the 7 Chaos Emeralds that keep the island and its animals safe. Sonic and Tails soon arrive in their trusty tornado plane, and Sonic uses the Chaos Emeralds he had acquired previously to transform into Super Sonic. However, tricked into working with Robotnik, Knuckles soon interrupts Sonic and takes the Chaos Emeralds from him. So the player, as Sonic, must get them back and once again prevent Dr. Robotnik from getting his hands on any of those magic gems. In Sonic 3, gamers take charge of Sonic or Tails and can also play as Knuckles, but only in competition mode, which is based on the two-player versus mode from the previous title. In October 1994, a continuation of the story was released titled Sonic and Knuckles. It was actually part of the same game, but since it was not finished on time, it was split into two and released separately. Essentially, gamers could combine Sonic and Knuckles with Sonic 3 to make Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Together, they are considered to be the complete game. Plus, players can play as Knuckles and Super Knuckles in the continuation. Sonic 3 was positively received. Sega Magazine declared it to be far superior than Sonic 2 as a whole, and a serious contender for the Best Platform Game Ever award. While it may not have won that particular award, it was given Editor's Choice Platinum by Electronic Gaming Monthly. Fun fact, according to the game's tester Jay Pataki, the message "Get Blue Spheres" that appears at the start of the game's special stages originally said, "Get Blue Balls." The text was changed because, well, I'm sure you can guess why. Speaking of blue balls, that's all for part 2. Click the video on the screen to watch part 3. Thanks for watching.